Morning! Happy Friday! Today I want to talk about some common website mistakes and what you can do to avoid them. Often whenever I do website walkthroughs, whenever I am talking to clients on discovery calls, there's usually one thing that comes up that is either a misconception or something they've been told that isn't necessarily helping their website from a traffic or a sales point of view. Just wanted to address a few of them this morning. There's always other tips and tricks that can help you avoid common issues. So there was a question that was asked yesterday in the Facebook group about subdomains. There is often a lot of confusion about this. This also came up on a discovery call this week when I was working with a client this week as well. Subdomains came up. So I'm going to dive into that one first. That's our first website mistake that people make, which is splitting their content across subdomains. When you hear people talking about subdomains, they are quite confusing sometimes. Think of it like a little offshoot from your main website that kind of acts as its own separate space. So if your website was yourskinclinic.com, you could have a separate part of it, which is blog.yourskinclinic.com or store.yourskinclinic.com. Subdomains can be really useful if you've got a really big website or if there are specific things you need to keep separate, like a course login area, or you don't want that as part of your main site. And for big companies and big websites, it can be really good, but they also tend to make things a bit more complicated. The biggest concern is the SEO impact of subdomains. Google will often treat subdomains like separate websites. So that means that you end up having to do SEO on both your subdomain and your normal website. And that's then really hard. You're basically doubling your SEO workload. And if you haven't got a team handling the SEO, then realistically, doing everything you can to keep all of that SEO juice together is really important. So if, for example, one of the questions that came up on a webinar that I was on last night, and it's actually from somebody who's in the group here. I always love it when I see online friends in random groups and webinars online where you think these people are on the other side of the world, and it's really funny. It's like bumping into random people when you're on holiday. We've done that before a few times where we bumped into friends in the airport in Florida, friends who live down the road. So the question was, if you build out sales pages on a different platform. So say if you've got a website on WordPress and then you build out your sales pages on FEA Create, Kajabi, ClickFunnels or somewhere else, what's the impact of that on your SEO? And it does have an impact. I think the big thing is all those sale pages contain so much valuable information, and people often put a lot of effort and a lot of thought into building out sales pages. All of those keywords that are then scattered through those sales pages are doing nothing for your main website. Whereas if you build the sales pages on your own website and domain, then just switch over to maybe the checkout page when you need to switch to the funnel builder. At least you're keeping all of that SEO juice, that real valuable SEO impact on your main domain. So that's where using subdomains, I think, like people maybe don't give it as much of a thought or don't even realize the impact of actually having that and having those separate places. The other thing with that is user experience. If visitors are jumping between your main domain and your subdomain, it can feel like they're visiting two different websites, and often if you haven't set them up so the actual visual appearance is the same, it can be a real disconnect there, and that can have a conversion rate effect. So that can have a real knock-on effect where people go to a next page and don't see what they're expecting. Maybe the branding is slightly different, the fonts are slightly different, your logo looks different or isn't there at all. That just, what's the word? It just loses some of that trust that then they have and moving to the next step. Is just any kind of little blip or hump in the road to getting people to take the action you want is something we want to try and avoid if we can. So what's the alternative then? If everything is in one place, if you're building a website out and you're using blog.yourwebsite, but everything is in one website builder, it would actually be much better to, rather than using a subdomain, we use what's called a subdirectory. And essentially, this is the simple part, because all it means is the bit after, if you've got yourskinclinic.com was your website, rather than it being blog.yourskinclinic.com, it's yourskinclinic.com/blog. So the subdirectory is the /blog part. And that is really good for helping Google understand the structure of your website, which is actually the next mistake that I'm going to come into. But that's how you can do it, is keeping everything in one place, thinking about it when you're actually thinking about, okay, where am I going to build my website? Am I going to use a separate funnel builder? How can I keep all of that valuable SEO juice and all of those valuable keywords on my main domain to really help me build up my SEO? The next one is poor navigation structure. It's again something that people don't necessarily think about when they're first planning a website, and I think especially if you are DIYing your website or you have DIY'd your website and it's just grown naturally, you can end up with a really messy website structure. And essentially what that does is when Google's little robots come through and crawl your website, if everything's nested in lots of different menus and different directories and isn't clear, it's not immediately clear to Google that these are the top pages for the site. So that is probably like your home page is the very top. And then you've got like your about page, your services page, your contact page, your blog archive page, that sort of main structure on the site. So think of that as like your top level navigation that you would have in your navigation bar at the top of your website. If you can get that right, because we all only get a certain amount of crawl budget from Google. So Google come through, the little robots come through and read our website, and that costs Google's servers money. So it costs Google money to come and read our websites. And so they try and make sure that they will only read what they need to on your site. So if you can make it easier for Google to see your site and not have everything buried 2, 3, 4 layers deep, then it's much more likely that the Google robots are going to go through, crawl through your site properly and index it properly as well. And also, if the structure isn't right from a back-end point of view, that also will come across to your users as well. So keeping simple navigation, it should be simple and it should be intuitive and logical organization of your pages. Make sure that the links are all working and the links go to the logical places where they should, because it helps with the user experience as well. So we don't want to make people burn mental calories trying to work out how to navigate our website, how to do business with us, how to get what we're selling or join our email list, or whatever it is we're trying to get them to do. We don't want to make it any more complicated than it needs to be. So that's something that I would definitely say is a big thing, is making sure the structure of your website is really well laid out and makes sense and is easy to navigate. And one thing you can do with that, which I find is often helpful, is if you're using Canva, you can use a Canva whiteboard to actually plan out your website. There's lots of ways you can do this. There's specific apps that you can use that will do this job for you. But I think from a visual point of view and from just an easy way to get your head around it, of the structure of your site, seeing that and seeing just some boxes with those pages and how they all link together is really helpful as well. So the next mistake is making your website not mobile friendly. So obviously the majority of people are using websites on their phone. And even if you're very corporate and the majority of people would come through to your website on a desktop, Google has a mobile first policy. So if your website isn't mobile friendly, even if you know that most of your users are on desktop, having a non-mobile friendly website will actually harm your rankings. So Google likes mobile friendly websites that look good on mobile, they're responsive, basically that they work well on mobile, that the text automatically resizes, the images are in the right place. It's not slow to load. That's a big thing with mobile friendliness, is that the website isn't slow to load, that is actually the next mistake that people make. The other thing with mobile friendliness is making sure that the fonts aren't too small. One of the mistakes that I see people making a lot is thinking, oh, it's a smaller screen, I need to make the fonts smaller. Whereas actually, if anything, they need to be slightly bigger. If you're using fonts that are fairly small on your website and you make those even smaller for mobile, it is a really bad user experience. Again, making sure that it's easy for people to use and navigate your website is really important. So don't make them get their glasses out to read what you're putting on your website. Google tends to not like font size below 16. I don't tend to often use below an 18, to be honest with you. And it does depend on the font. Some fonts definitely look larger when you use them. But it's something that's important to make sure that your font size is at least 16 pixels. The other thing with making sure your website's mobile friendly is making sure that your buttons and your elements that need to be tapped, make sure that they're far enough apart, that if somebody's using your website with fatter fingers, that they're not going to be accidentally tapping on the wrong things. That's an accessibility thing. So if you can actually make that work as well, making sure that everything has a good amount of space around it when it's things that need to be clicked, then that's another mobile friendly tip that you can use. The third mistake that people often make is slow page load times. And this is one that sometimes this is within our control and sometimes it's not. So I always say to people, just focus on the bits that you can control. So you can control whether you load images up to your website that are the right size. Ideally, any images that go onto our website should be under 100 kilobytes in size. This is one of those big mistakes that I often see. Well, most websites have got at least one image that's something ridiculous, like 5 megabytes or something like that. A megabyte is 1,000 kilobytes, and we want it under 100 kilobytes. So you can see what a difference that can make in terms of how long it takes for that page to load. And the problem is, because you've visited your website lots of times, you might think, oh no, it loads okay. But it's the first time you visit it, that's when it can be an issue. And this is one of the issues with Squarespace websites. So Squarespace is really easy to use. They always look beautiful, generally, Squarespace sites, but page load speed is a big issue. And it's often is the code behind it. This used to be an issue with FEA Create, but they did a big update last year that kind of fixed this issue. So their websites tend to load faster. There are definitely a few blips in there where they don't. And even with WordPress, if your site isn't optimized, then it may not be loading fast. The thing with WordPress is you've got more control of the code behind it, basically. So as I say, don't worry about the code behind it. All you can do is worry about the bits that you have control over. So that is making sure that you do what you can and making sure that those images on your site are actually optimized to under 100 kilobytes if you can. You can use tools to help with this. There's a Google's Page Speed Insights. You can go to that. This often looks really confusing. People will go there and see the score, look down and see a load of stuff about codes and JavaScript and all sorts of things like that. But what you want to do there is look, and if you can see anything there about images, look at what it says there. And if you're not sure what it means, pop it into ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT, what does this mean? How can I fix it? And it might give you some good tips for what you could do. There are also some great Google Chrome plugins as well that will tell you the size of your images right there on those pages, and that can be something that's really helpful. But it's something that if you've never thought about optimizing your images, then it's certainly worth looking at what sizes they are and is it affecting your page speed. Ideally, what you want is all pages of your website loading in under 3 seconds. That's the goal. Is we want that. You might find that you still get a score that's like in the orange. If you use Google Page Speed Insights, you'll see it's like a traffic light system. So then it's worth then looking at whether it will load within 3 seconds, and you might still be in the orange, but it might be that it still does load within 3 seconds, and that's sort of the most important thing to focus on first. If you can get that bit down, then that is helpful, even if not everything is loading on your page. And it's good this because it shows you pictures of how quickly things are loading, so you can see whether your most important things on your pages are loading in less than 3 seconds. The next mistake is having a lack of clear call to action. Again, this is one of those ones that I see time and again if I'm doing web page walkthrough, where we're not guiding our visitors, we're not having the call to action, but also just in general not making it clear what we do, how we make people's lives better, and that all important what they need to do to get it. I think whether it's making a decision on what action you want people to take from a page as well. So ideally, we just have one call to action on each page. Your homepage might be slightly different because it often is more of a like a signposting page, really, where you can have different things happening on your website. But it's still good to think, even if you're thinking, okay, if someone's coming into my homepage from where they know about me, where do I want them to go? If someone's coming into my homepage who has no idea about me, but they know they have a problem and I might be that solution, where should they go? If someone's coming in and they have no idea they have a problem, they just have stumbled across my website from something they've maybe typed into Google, then where do they go? And so if you can think about those things, then that can be really helpful in terms of determining what action you want people to take from pages, and then making sure that it's a compelling reason for people to actually take that next step. So make sure it's very visible, have a button or a form, and make sure that it does align with, as I say, what you want them to do. And having things like book now, get your free consultation now, it's quite good to have like an action word within that call to action as well. So something like now, today, There's lots of different ones that you could use around that. And also making sure that those buttons are big enough. We often end up making our buttons, especially if we are looking on desktop, the buttons aren't really, really clear. And again, that's another thing with the mobile optimization, making sure that they look good on both desktop and mobile. So sometimes buttons can look really big on mobile, too big, and then look way too small on desktop, really. So making sure that that's good, it's really tappable, that the text on the button is as big as it can be as well. So I often see people who've got big buttons, but then they've got tiny text on the button. And the other thing you can do with your buttons is using directional cues. So every button on your site should have something that's pointing people in the direction you want them to take. So whether that's a couple of chevrons or an arrow or whatever you can add in there, an emoji, but something that's guiding them to actually take that action and pointing towards the sort of the right hand side of the screen, I guess. The next one is more of a copy issue. So it's where there's too much information on your website. So especially if it's walls of text, you do need lots of information on your website, but it's how you can then break that down to make it really simple, really engaging, not overwhelming, and something that people can skim and get the gist of. So anything where you've got more than a couple of paragraphs, and a paragraph really shouldn't be more than a couple of sentences, and you haven't broken that up with something like an image, icon, bullet list or heading, then even whether it's a blog, sales page, or your about page, it's always going to be harder for people to actually take that action to read it. So ideally, people should be able to read the heading of a section, whatever you've put in bold, and read the call to action below that section and understand what the section's about and whether they need to take that action. But the goal is that they skim through the headline and we don't even realize we're doing it. It all happens so fast when we're looking at stuff on a page. Skim through and then come back and read it. If they think, oh yeah, I need to read that section, then they come back and read that. So keep it to what is necessary. Avoid fluff, avoid technical jargon. I think this is often the curse of knowledge, that we don't realize how simple we need to make things. Use icons and visuals where you can to get that message across. Our brains process that so much faster than written text. It's easier and it helps to get that message across quickly and easily, so people then understand if they need to dive in a bit further and read that section. Make sure it's clear, simple, and people can easily understand what you're talking about on your site. This is a big mistake that I think a lot of people do, that is probably one of the most common things that I see with so many businesses. And I think that actually this is something that gives us a little bit of hope when we're talking about SEO. Something I said to a client yesterday was, all you need to be doing is slightly more than the competition. And I think that does make things more digestible. But one of the big mistakes people make is just ignoring SEO completely, and especially ignoring the basics. So many websites are built without even thinking about SEO, and it misses out on so much potential for Google to start understanding your site. Even if you're not doing anything with your SEO right now, it means that you can start gathering an SEO, I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, but basically you can start gathering SEO in the background. So Google will be making decisions about your site in the background. But if you don't tell it anything, and you don't submit your sitemap, you don't kind of keep an eye on the basics, you can have a website that's 12 years old and it's got no traffic coming from Google. And that is just criminal. I see it time and time again where people have got old websites, they've been blogging forever, but they've not put some basic things in place, like making sure that the page titles and descriptions, and making sure you've got a sitemap and that's actually submitted to Google, making sure that you have a plan on what pages are most important for your most important keywords in your business, and actually talking about that in your website. Without doing that, you're missing out on so much potential, really. And even just doing that will really help when you do come to the point where you think, okay, I can see I'm getting a little bit of traffic through search. You've already started that journey of getting to the point where Google understands what you do and understands where you should go in those indexes, really. So as I say, you only need to be doing a little bit more than the competition to have a big effect on this. Next mistake is broken links or outdated content. Broken links, and the same with outdated content, is a real signal to Google and to users as well that your website and maybe your business isn't still relevant. making sure that you regularly audit your site, make sure you're checking for any broken links and keeping your content fresh and up to date. We're often feeling like we have to produce more and more and more and more and more content. And I actually will link to an episode about not feeling like you've got to keep feeding the algorithm, but rather than that, and then completely ignoring the content, the valuable content that you've already got on your website. And that's something that a lot of people do. We tend to put something out there and then forget about it. Whereas actually content that's already been out there for a while, if you can then update it and let Google know that this content has been updated as part of your SEO strategy, that can be really powerful, because those pages may already have some SEO authority, and by you updating them, you can quickly get some results on that and actually then start getting some traffic coming through those pages. So that's really important. Making sure if there are broken links on your site, you can just pop in and fix those. This is also something I help clients with when I do audits as well. So it's one of the things that we're looking for when we're doing website audits. So going in and fixing those links, it's something that's simple, quick, easy for you to do, and it can make a big difference to how Google sees your website. The next one is not using the free tools from Google. So we've got Google Search Console and Google Analytics, which are both fabulous free tools. Out of those two, I would actually say to focus on Google Search Console first. It's easier to set up. It's an easier interface to use. It's going to tell you basically how Google sees your website, what search terms Google is already sending traffic through to your website, or at least you're showing up in search results. Even if the traffic out isn't resulting in clicks right now, you can see the average position that you're in those search results, and I'll link to the episode on Google Search Console so you can dive into that more. Yeah, I think those free tools that can help massively, even if you don't fully understand them right now, setting them up and letting them gather the data in the background is really helpful, so that when you are ready to dive into this, you've got something to work with. And then the last one, and actually this was another one that came up on a call with a client this week, and they'd been advised by somebody to remove their about page. And often when I look at clients' analytics, the about page is often the second most visited page on our website. We're nosy, and not even nosy. We want to know whose site we're on. We want to know more about them and their company and who we're thinking about doing business with. So having a strong about page can make a massive difference. And it's also one of the pages that Google looks for as a sign of trust of a business. So Google looks for a home page, about page, and a contact page. And if you don't have those in your top level navigation as a clear sign to Google that you are actually a legitimate business, that can be a small tweak you can make that can make a big difference. But people want to see an about page. We expect that as well. If we look at a navigation menu, we expect to see an about page there as well. And with your about page, it's getting the balance right between it being about you, but it really is about why you're the best person to help your audience. So it's a little bit about telling your story, but it really has to be, or should be, there's no has to, it's your website, you do what you want to do, you do you. But it's really trying to make sure that they understand why you're that trusted guide to help to lead them on the way to them getting to their success or them overcoming the problem they want to. So if you can connect with them, help them understand why you are that trusted person, why you can help them fix their problems, and why you understand their struggles as well. So you can make it personal, you can add a little bit more personality as well. So thinking about this as not just being a page about your bio, what else can you put into your about page that can help to show the trust? So whether that is a section of a few testimonials, and it is better to scatter them through that page, whether if you've won any awards, and I would definitely say discreetly, because often I see this where it's a big banner around an award on a website and people don't really care about that. We kind of want people to skim through those things and almost not read them properly, but see that it's there and it's helping to increase trust in your business. And even things like, what frequently asked questions could you have on your about page? It may relate to how you work and what you do, or it may just be, sort of general. And this is where AI can be really helpful. You can ask AI to come up with some good, engaging, frequently asked questions to pop on your about page. And if you've got things like a quiz, or you've got a content upgrade, so something people can read, so a blog or a PDF that can encourage people to get onto your email list, then actually having that there on your about page as well, and that connection of why this is the best person, this is the guide that's going to help you overcome your problem, and this is my recommended next best step, or something like that, then you could have that there on the about page. Well, there's so much potential with all of our pages on our website to expand on what we are doing and help people understand us better. If you were thinking about what pages am I going to start on my website, then optimizing your homepage and about page, and then a services page. If I'm starting with SEO with people, that's always where we start. It's phase one of the pathway to website success as well. Getting those key pages optimized makes a massive difference. So I hope that's been helpful in terms of the mistakes people make with their website. I'd love to know if you feel like you're making any of these mistakes, or if there are any of these that you feel like, nope, I've got that nailed. I know that bit is okay. That's good for me. It's something that you don't have to fix this all at once. You don't have to spend days, weeks, months fixing all of these things. But if you spend some time every week or every month just chipping away at some of these problems, and if you come up against one that's too technical, then move on to one that's easier. Do what you can, really do what you can. Even if you just take it one page at a time, one section of your website at a time, that can make a massive difference. So don't feel like you've got to tackle everything all in one go, but also do start tackling some things, because just putting that first step on the ladder can make a massive difference. And I think we all spend so much time thinking about what we can create for social media and what content we need to be creating, and actually fixing some of these issues can be that thing of you doing that little bit more than the competition. So you can start getting some traffic coming through from Google without having to constantly be feeding the algorithm and creating more and more content. If you feel like your website's got some of these issues and you need some help with this, I'd love to take a closer look. So book a 20-minute website success discovery call with me, and let's chat about how we can get your website working better for your business and what are the key steps for you to take first. So I hope you have a lovely weekend, and I'll see you soon. Bye.